He said the family trip was cancelled. "Money's tight," he murmured, kissing my forehead before heading out. That weekend, while the lake shimmered somewhere far away, I stood under hospital lights, trading rest for overtime. 2 days later, his sister posted a photo. Dinner by the water, champagne glasses catching the sunset. Everyone there, everyone but me. My phone buzzed. "Need $2,800. It's urgent." I typed 5 words that changed everything. "Ask your family, Tia." The ICU hummed behind me, and I realized my marriage had ended quietly, between a text, a lie, and the glow of hospital light. The ring on my finger was barely a quarter carat, a chip of glass pretending to be forever. I'd told myself size didn't matter, that love wasn't measured in clarity or cut. That morning, at our uneven kitchen table, the one we'd rescued from the curb and painted white, Evan sat across from me, fidgeting with his wedding band like it was burning him. "The lake trip's off this year," he said, voice wrapped in false regret. "Money's just too tight." I reached for his hand, feeling the roughness from the golf clubs his father had gifted him, a sport he somehow had time for, even when he couldn't find work. "We'll get through this," I told him, already mapping out which shifts I could pick up. Love, I thought, meant adapting. He smiled, that same boyish grin that had once convinced me ramen could be a romantic dinner. "Thanks, Liv. Mom and Dad will be disappointed, but they'll understand." That weekend, I worked through the hum of machines and the smell of antiseptic, while his family toasted by the lake. When the crash victims started pouring in, I didn't think about Evan. I didn't think about his hands or his lies. My gloves filled with blood, my body moved on instinct, and my mind stayed mercifully blank. But when the adrenaline faded, and I found myself alone in the ICU corridor, that old text pulsed in my pocket like a live wire. "Need $2,800. It's urgent." By then, I understood what his expression at the kitchen table had really meant. It wasn't stress, it wasn't guilt, it was goodbye. To the version of me who believed love meant paying someone else's debts, while they spent weekends at the lake without me. The boy lived. His mother collapsed against me, sobbing into my scrubs as I told her he'd make it. Her gratitude soaked through the fabric, while my own world quietly came undone beneath it. Sometimes you save a life and lose your own in the same shift. The teenager survived. His mother's knees gave out when we told her. I held her steady, my voice calm, my heart not. Hours later, in the dark cafeteria, I watched Claire's video, champagne, laughter, Evan's easy smile. Every frame proof of a plan built on my overtime. My coffee went cold. My hands shook as I opened our banking app. There it was, 36 months, $2,800 each. Family support, property tax help, emergency fund, labels for a lie, $100,800 in total. That money could have been a new car, a vacation we both attended, a floor without peeling linoleum. Instead, it bought them champagne, sunlight, and a weekend without me. When I caught my reflection in the bathroom mirror the next morning, I didn't recognize her. Hollow eyes, pale skin, a nurse running on betrayal instead of caffeine. The ICU blurred around me. Patients came and went, but all I could feel was that glowing text in my pocket, pulsing like a heartbeat. Need $2,800. It's urgent. I'd saved a boy's life that day, and somewhere by the lake, my husband was toasting to mine like it was disposable. I sat in the dark, still in my scrubs, the scent of antiseptic clinging to my skin, while the weekend replayed like a film I couldn't pause. Every scene blurred together. The mother's tears, the crash victims, the video by the lake, the $100,800 I'd unknowingly given away. Some heartbreaks don't break you loudly. They just rearrange who you are in silence. I sank into our second-hand couch, too tired to shower, too wired to sleep. The trauma bay still echoed in my bones, the mother's sobs, the blood, the faces, and layered beneath it all, the images from Claire's video, champagne, laughter, Evan's easy smile, 36 months of payments looping in my mind like a cruel accounting reel. My phone sat face down beside me. No messages, no how was your shift, no drive safe, nothing. By Monday morning, the exhaustion had hardened into something colder. At 7 a.m., his key turned in the lock, like clockwork. He came in carrying a paper bag from the fancy bakery downtown. The one we'd both agreed was too expensive. "Morning, Liv," he said brightly, voice clean, unbothered. "Brought breakfast, bagels, cream cheese, lox, probably $30 of guilt." He slid a coffee toward me, oat milk and extra shot, just the way I liked it. I studied his tan, the kind you only get from water and sunlight, not spreadsheets and stress. "How was your weekend?" he asked, settling in like nothing had fractured. "It was perfect," I said, taking a slow sip. The coffee was good, expensive, just like the lie. He smiled, spreading cream cheese over his bagel. "Tough weekend for you, huh?" I caught up on reports, worked from the balcony, got some sun. Our balcony barely fit one chair and saw sunlight for an hour on a good day. I nodded. "Looks like it." Then quietly, I said, "Your mom texted. She needs the payment today." He didn't flinch, didn't hesitate. "Oh, right. First already. I'll handle it after my shower." He stretched, casual, content, then disappeared down the hall. The water started. His voice followed, off-key, carefree, safe in the lie. I opened the laptop. The numbers stared back, line after line. 3 years of payments, every month, every excuse, every betrayal, documented in clean digital text. I took screenshots, methodical and calm, like charting vitals after a code blue. Then I made a new folder. One word: truth. By the time Evan stepped out, hair damp, smelling of his overpriced shampoo, I was sipping coffee again, pretending nothing had changed. "Heading to the office," he said, grabbing his bag. "Of course," I replied. That night, he acted normal. Tuesday, too. Wednesday, we watched a show about honesty in relationships, and I didn't laugh. Thursday, during lunch at the hospital, my phone buzzed. "Babe, need $2,800 today. Mom's mortgage is due. Urgent. Can you transfer?" The hum of the cafeteria faded. Around me, real emergencies unfolded. Alarms beeping, pagers echoing, voices steady and brave. I typed 5 words with the same precision I used to start an IV. "Ask your family." I didn't know it then, but that message would rebuild my entire life, one truth at a time. The phone rang instantly, his name on the screen, panic on the other end of the signal. I walked to the supply closet, closed the door, and let the antiseptic air steady me. "It means," I said, my voice quiet but certain, "I saw Claire's video from your canceled family trip. The one where everyone made it this year, silence stretched, thick, sterile, final." "Liv, you don't understand." "I understand perfectly," I cut in. "I paid for the life that excluded me." He begged, voice cracking, trying to reshape the truth into something gentler. "But some lies can't be softened." "There are actual emergencies here, Evan," I said. "Not the kind you manufacture." Then I hung up, handed a nurse the gauze she needed, and went back to work. 6 more hours of real pain, real healing, no more pretending. When I opened the apartment door that night, I thought I'd stepped into someone else's life. Candles flickered across every surface, the illusion of love staged by someone who'd already spent it. Some apologies come plated with pasta and deceit. When I walked in at 8, exhaustion still clinging to me, like a second skin, I froze. Candles flickered across every surface, the illusion of love staged by someone who'd already spent it. Evan stepped from the kitchen in the burgundy shirt I'd bought him last Christmas, holding a bottle of $30 wine. "Olivia," he said softly, "I made dinner. Your favorite." "That's thoughtful," I said, sitting. "What are we celebrating?" He poured the wine with shaking hands. "Mom feels terrible. She's been crying all day." I looked at the plate, the perfect meal, the empty gesture. "Your mom who cashed my $2,800, I asked. He swallowed. "She thought you were working." "She thought wrong," I cut in. "I was funding her dinner." He reached for my hand. I kept it in my lap. "You hate big gatherings after your shifts," he offered weakly. "I say I'm tired," I said. "That's not the same as wanting to be erased." It wasn't about the money. It's always about the money. I took a sip of wine, smooth, expensive, probably charged to a card I'd be paying off. "Your family took $100,000 from me, Evan, while I wore holes in my scrubs and drove a car that coughed at every red light." "That's an exaggeration." I smiled without warmth. "I have the statements. Want to see them?" His face changed then, the husband mask slipping just enough to reveal fear, calculation, something raw. "They're my parents," he whispered. "Family helps family." "Apparently I'm not family." Silence, just the soft hiss of candle wax meeting flame. He chewed the air, searching for words that could still hold power. "Mom wants to talk to you," he said finally. "She feels terrible about the misunderstanding." "The misunderstanding," I repeated, standing. Like this was about dinner plans, not years of deceit. I pushed the chair back gently, deliberately. "She can call me herself. But I'm done. With the money, and with this conversation, I left him sitting in the candlelight, surrounded by the ruins of his own performance, a meal gone cold, and the scent of something burning that once pretended to be love. The next morning, her name lit my phone screen, Nancy, his mother. I answered while tying my scrub laces, her syrupy voice spilling through the speaker. "Olivia, sweetheart, this whole thing's gotten so out of hand." I kept my tone even. "Has it?" "We thought you were working, dear." "Evan said you picked up extra shifts. We didn't want to make you feel bad about missing family time. So instead of inviting me, I said, you lied. That was the kinder option." "Kinder for who?" "Silence. The kind that tells the truth." "The money you send," she began again, "it's not about that. We're grateful, but family is about more than money." "I agree," I said, glancing at my reflection. "Which is why it's confusing to be excluded from family events I paid for. Olivia, please. The house, the mortgage, we could lose everything. Then sell one of the boats," I said, voice calm, clinical. "Or ask the ones who actually got invited. The real family." "You don't mean that." "I do. The transfers stop now. If you need help, ask your family." Then I hung up, buttoned my scrub top, and walked out the door. No more payments, no more pretending. By morning, their grief turned digital. 3 hours after I ended the payments, Claire's Instagram became their battleground. a chorus of martyrdom disguised as family values. They built their narrative out of lies, and I built my freedom out of evidence. Within hours, the assault began, not in person, but online. Claire, Evan's sister, led the charge. Her first post was subtle, a pastel quote against a lake backdrop. Family isn't about blood. It's about who holds your hand when you need it most. By lunch, subtlety was dead. A photo of the lake house appeared with a long, tear-stained caption about childhood memories and loyalty and sacrifice. "Some people just see dollar signs," she wrote, beneath a heart emoji. The comments came fast. Cousins I'd never met called me heartless. Aunts who'd never invited me to dinner labeled me selfish. Some stranger named Barbara, probably Nancy's church friend, wrote a full essay about modern women and their lack of family values. I didn't argue. I documented. Screenshots, folders, timestamps, truth archived line by line. By the time Claire blocked me, I had everything I needed. Proof of what family looked like when the money stopped. Saturday morning, I saw Evan's phone light up on the counter while he showered. Message after message from his brother, Jason. "Your wife is destroying everything. Mom can't stop crying. Dad says you chose wrong, man." I photographed every text. My hands didn't shake. Evidence, not emotion. When Evan came out, towel around his waist, I was still standing there. "Jason's upset," he said, like that explained the venom. "Jason's been unemployed for 2 years," I said calmly. "He should be upset about that instead." By Monday, I'd made my decision. During lunch break, I drove to a small credit union across town, one Evan didn't even know existed. The woman behind the desk, Patricia, had silver streaks in her hair and eyes that understood without asking. "I need to open a checking account," I said quietly, "just in my name." She didn't flinch. Maybe she'd helped other women in the same quiet kind of crisis. When she asked for my first deposit, I handed her the $800 from my extra weekend shifts, the money I'd earned while they vacationed at my expense. Patricia smiled gently as she slid a blue debit card across the desk. It was plain, ordinary, yet it felt like a key. For the first time, I was earning for myself, not them. That night, I sat at the kitchen table while Evan watched TV in the living room, the laugh track echoing like a bad joke. I logged into my HR system and rerouted my direct deposit. Next paycheck, every dollar would land somewhere he couldn't touch. "What are you working on?" he asked, glancing over. "Just updating some work stuff," I said. He nodded and went back to pretending everything was fine. He didn't know I'd just cut the cord that kept me tethered to their manipulation. I didn't realize it then, but freedom rarely announces itself. It just starts with a password change and a heartbeat that finally slows. 2 days later, instead of eating in the hospital cafeteria, I drove to a small office on Elm Street. Dr. Sarah Chen, licensed therapist. Her waiting room smelled faintly of eucalyptus and quiet understanding. When she asked why I was there, the words poured out. 3 years of payments. The lake house lies, the gaslighting, the exclusion, the way they made generosity feel like duty and loyalty feel like debt. By the time I finished, half the tissue box was gone and my chest felt lighter. Dr. Chen leaned forward, calm and clear. "Olivia, what you're describing is financial abuse. It's real, it's valid, and it's not your fault," I laughed through tears. "I feel so stupid. How did I not see it?" "Because it started small," she said gently. "Because you loved him. Because they made you believe you were helping, not being used." Her words sank deep. Truth wrapped in compassion. Then she said the part that shattered and rebuilt me all at once. And the vacation they excluded you from while taking your money, that was emotional abuse. They isolated you while profiting off your kindness. For the first time, someone saw it exactly as it was. Not a misunderstanding, not a family feud. Abuse disguised as obligation. I opened my own account, I told her quietly. Dr. Chen smiled. That's a huge step. How does it feel? Terrifying, I admitted, and free. When I left her office, I had another appointment on the calendar and a pulse I hadn't felt in years. The $2,800 I didn't send became something sacred. Proof that freedom could be bought one paycheck at a time. While they spiraled into blame, I was building an exit. One search, one apartment listing, one quiet act of defiance. Sometimes the softest escape is the loudest revenge. The money I'd once sent to Nancy was now sitting safely in my account, untouched, enough to cover therapy for months. During my breaks, I scrolled through apartment listings, each one a door that might open into a life of my own. Most were too expensive or too dangerous. But Friday afternoon, I found it, a one-bedroom in an old brick building that used to be a Catholic school. 10 minutes from the hospital, clean, quiet, safe. I called immediately. The landlord, Mrs. Patterson, answered with a voice that sounded like kindness. "Can you come by tomorrow morning?" she asked. 10 works, I said. Saturday, I told Evan I was picking up an extra shift. Instead, I drove to the converted schoolhouse. Mrs. Patterson stood outside, silver-haired and steady-eyed. "You're the nurse from St. Mary's?" "Yes, ma'am." She led me upstairs to a corner unit. Sunlight flooded the hardwood floors, scratched but honest. The windows opened, the air felt clean. "The kitchen's small," she said, "but it's got a gas stove." Her eyes softened. "I was a nurse, too, once, retired 5 years ago. I know that look, the one that says you need a fresh start." "Is it that obvious?" I asked. "Only to someone who's been there." She handed me the application. "If you need it today, it's yours." I filled it out using my maiden name, Olivia Reed. It felt like reclaiming my real identity. "When can I move in?" I asked. Mrs. Patterson smiled. "Sometimes the best time to start over is right now." That night, Evan left for his monthly poker game. He kissed my cheek without noticing the distance in it. As his car disappeared down the street, I began, methodical, calm, certain. I packed only what was mine before him, my nursing books, the coffee maker I'd bought myself, my grandmother's jewelry box, clothes that still fit. The wedding china stayed, the framed photos stayed, every trace of the shared illusion stayed behind. On the kitchen table, I laid out 36 months of bank statements in perfect order. Beside them, my wedding ring, the tiny diamond catching the overhead light one last time. Then, in my neatest handwriting, "I've withdrawn my funding and myself from this arrangement. Your family can support you now." When Evan's headlights flashed in the parking lot at midnight, I was already gone. Sitting cross-legged on the floor of my new apartment, surrounded by boxes and silence, a sleeping bag beneath me and peace above me. That night, I didn't just leave my marriage. I left the version of me that mistook giving for love. The next week, the first voicemail came Tuesday. Nancy's voice, syrup sweet. "Olivia, honey, there must be some confusion. The transfer didn't go through. Call me back Wednesday." Another. The mortgage company called. "This is serious. Please, Olivia, we need that payment today." By Thursday, the mask slipped. "How could you do this to family? After everything we've done for you?" I listened once, then deleted each message. No guilt, no hesitation, just that strange, clean satisfaction. Like watching someone who cut you off in traffic finally get pulled over. At shift change, Beth squinted at me. "You look different," she said. "Rested." "Finally sleeping," I replied, and it was true. In my new apartment, I slept without Evan's snoring, without guilt buzzing through my phone, without the weight of funding. People who'd mistaken my love for leverage. Friday afternoon, Claire struck again online. A photo of the lake house under soft golden light, a for sale sign, stabbing the lawn like irony itself. Her caption read, "Thanks to some people's selfishness, childhood memories are being sold." Some people only see dollar signs where we see home. The comments were a battlefield. Relatives I'd never met called me heartless. Aunts labeled me greedy. Someone named Aunt Helen wrote a novel about young wives who don't understand sacrifice. But then Susan, my coworker from the night shift, the one who'd seen me count quarters for lunch, left a comment. Maybe if you treated her like family instead of an ATM, she'd still be helping. It stayed up for 6 minutes before Claire deleted it. Long enough for Susan to screenshot it. Long enough for the nurses' lounge to cheer quietly when they saw it. By that weekend, I wasn't just surviving, I was becoming untouchable. By the end of my shift, half the nurses knew, and suddenly, I wasn't alone anymore. These women understood exhaustion, sacrifice, and the ache of being undervalued. They made my story their rallying cry. Sometimes the right audience turns your pain into power. By the time my shift ended, the entire floor had seen Claire's deleted post, and Susan's legendary comment. The nurses had adopted me like one of their own. Women who understood double shifts and invisible labor, who'd given too much to people who said thank you too little. "Posting that after taking your money for years," Beth muttered, shaking her head. The audacity. Saturday morning, Evan began his campaign. The first email arrived at 6 a.m., 3 pages, single-spaced, chronicling our entire relationship like a closing argument. I deleted it after the first paragraph. By mid-morning, 24 roses appeared at the hospital reception desk. The card read, "Please come home. We can fix this." Maria, the receptionist, raised an eyebrow. "Want me to donate these to the cardiac ward?" "Perfect," I said. "The patients will appreciate them more than I do." Sunday. When my shift ended, he was waiting by my car. Wrinkled clothes, unshaven face, that hollow-eyed look of a man who'd lost control. "Olivia, please. Just 5 minutes. Move away from my car. We need to talk about us." "There is no us," I said evenly. "There's you and your family, and me and my self-respect. 2 different relationships." "That's not fair." I laughed, quiet and sharp. Fair would have been inviting me to the vacation I paid for. Fair would have been telling me the truth. Fair would have been treating me like a wife instead of a bank. He stepped closer, blocking the door. That's when Officer Johnson, from hospital security, appeared, one hand on his radio. "Sir, you need to leave hospital property. She's asked you to step away." "This is my wife," Evan snapped. "Then you should have listened to her sooner," Johnson said, guiding him toward the lot. Evan's voice cracked as he called back, "This isn't over, Olivia. We're married." "Not for much longer," I said, sliding into my car. From the break room window, my coworkers had watched the whole scene unfold. When I came in to clock out properly, they greeted me with quiet applause. Dr. Martinez handed me a coffee. "You okay, Reed?" He'd started using my maiden name again, unprompted. "Better than okay," I said. "Free." Monday. The next text came early. Jake lost his bike, had to sell his jackets. Hope you're happy. Jake, the brother who hadn't worked in 2 years, finally facing reality. I took a photo of my new scrubs, the first ones I'd bought in years, and sent it back. I love being able to afford work clothes. Funny how that works. He didn't reply. Through the hospital grapevine, I learned the rest. The lake house had multiple offers, all below asking price. Nancy and Robert's dream home needed repairs they could no longer afford. Evan had moved back in with them, claiming it was to help out. Everyone knew it was because he couldn't afford the rent. Then came Nancy's final voicemail. I hope you can live with yourself, destroying a family like this. We welcomed you in, and this is how you repay us. I saved that one, not from guilt, but as evidence. They'd welcomed my money, not me. Now they were learning the difference. 2 months later, I'd been saving quietly, every paycheck, every overtime shift. When I finally looked at the balance, it hit me. I had enough. Enough to buy a ticket. Enough to reclaim a promise I'd made to myself years ago. A solo trip. Sedona. The flight was early morning, middle seat, cheapest fare. I didn't care. For the first time, I wasn't running from anything. I was flying toward something. Sedona greeted me in gold and fire. Warm days, cool nights, and sunsets that turned the rocks molten. My hotel was modest but perfect, clean, quiet, with a small balcony that faced Thunder Mountain. That first night, I sat outside with a cup of tea, the air smelling of desert sage. For the first time in years, I could hear my own breathing, steady, calm, mine. The next morning, I hiked Cathedral Rock at sunrise. The climb was steep, my legs burning, the air thin, but I kept going. This wasn't exercise, this was resurrection. Halfway up, sitting on a ledge to rest, my phone buzzed. I'd forgotten to turn it on airplane mode. The subject line made me laugh out loud under the blazing sky. The truth about Olivia Reed. Nancy had emailed everyone she knew, 3 paragraphs of venom, about how I'd destroyed her family, how I'd manipulated her son, how I'd pretended to care. I let the desert wind dry my tears, not of pain, but of release, because this time, the only truth that mattered was the one I was finally living. Nancy's email arrived just after sunrise. 3 paragraphs of polished venom sent to 43 people. She listed every loss like an obituary: the lake house, Jake's bike, their comfort. Every line blamed me for their downfall. They called it destruction. I called it accountability. Nancy's email was 3 pages of self-pity, sent to 43 people, a public performance of victimhood. She blamed me for everything: the lake house, the motorcycle, their comfort. I sat on a red rock ledge, sunlight pouring across the valley, and felt nothing. The storm had passed, and I was finally dry. I hit reply all. I contributed $100,800 over 3 years while being excluded from family gatherings. I was told the annual lake trip was canceled due to budget constraints. Then I saw photos of everyone there, except me. You're not struggling because I stopped giving. You're struggling because you never learned to live within your actual means. I wish you all the best in your adjusted circumstances. Please remove me from future communications. I hit send. Then I turned my phone completely off. The rest of the climb was pure meditation, my breath sinking with the wind, the stone, the sky. At the summit, another woman sat nearby, alone and peaceful. "First time?" she asked. I nodded. She smiled. "These rocks have seen it all." We sat in silence, 2 strangers who understood that some journeys are meant to be walked alone. 3 days later. Back home, the lake house went to auction. Claire, predictably, made it a content opportunity. Photos of the for sale sign, videos of potential buyers. Then a final shot of her by the dock, captioned, "Goodbye to childhood memories." Some people know the price of everything and the value of nothing. I was at work when it happened, steadying my hand as I started an IV for an elderly patient. His daughter watched nervously, and I recognized her expression. "You're the nurse," she said quietly. "From those Instagram posts." I didn't react, just kept my focus. "My ex's family did the same thing," she continued. "Took and took, then called me selfish when I stopped giving. You're brave." "Just practical," I said softly, taping the line in place. "Your father's going to be fine." And as I held the old man's hand, I realized something simple and undeniable. This was my real family now. The patients who trusted me, the coworkers who had my back, the people who valued what I gave freely. 2 weeks later, the divorce papers were ready. My lawyer, paid entirely with my own money, filed for a clean, no-fault split. No alimony, no shared assets, just an ending signed in ink instead of tears. The process server said Evan looked hollow when he opened the door, shirt wrinkled, eyes tired, like someone who'd lived too long in his own excuses. He called immediately. "Olivia, please, we can fix this. Come talk to me." "There's nothing left to discuss," I said. "You made choices." So did I. Mine was to stop funding people who excluded me. Through the window, the process server later told me, Nancy had watched, face pressed to the glass, like a child staring at candy she could no longer afford. 2 days later, Evan signed every page. 6 months later, Thanksgiving. The invitation arrived on expensive cardstock. Nancy must have bought before their downfall. "Despite everything, you're still family. Please join us for Thanksgiving dinner." The return address wasn't the lake house. It was their rental apartment. The dinner wouldn't overlook the water. The turkey would be store-bought, not organic. I was working that day anyway, holiday pay, and the ER needed staff. But even if I'd been free, my answer would have been the same. I mailed the invitation back with one line written in black ink. "Family doesn't require payment for admission." Then I blocked every number, Evan's, Nancy's, Jake's, Claire's, even the cousins, who'd once called me heartless. That night, under the bright hum of hospital lights, I worked my shift with an ease I hadn't known in years. No phone buzzing, no guilt pressing down. Just steady hands, living purpose, and freedom. "Read," Dr. Martinez called out, handing me a plate from the break room spread. "Turkey?" "Thanks," I said, smiling. "Real turkey, real stuffing, real belonging." No one here expected payment for inclusion. Months passed. Winter melted into spring and spring into summer. I learned to cook for one, and it felt like peace, not absence. I filled my apartment with life, a snake plant by the window, ivy trailing from a shelf, a peace lily that bloomed unexpectedly in July. They thrived in the sunlight. So did I. My bank account did something I'd never seen before. It grew. Without the hemorrhage of $2,800 a month, every paycheck became proof that peace pays better than sacrifice ever did. Freedom doesn't always arrive loud. Sometimes it shows up as a number that finally climbs instead of bleeds. Unlike our old apartment, where every breath and dollar felt trapped, my new life expanded quietly. My savings ticked upward for the first time in years, not by much, but steadily. Enough for car repairs without panic. Enough for new work shoes without guilt. Enough for a dinner out without checking the price 3 times. 6 months after leaving Evan, I earned a promotion to shift supervisor. The raise wasn't huge, but it felt monumental. Validation measured not in numbers, but in self-worth. In August, the editor of the hospital newsletter stopped me in the hallway. "We're doing a series on financial wellness for healthcare workers," she said. "Would you consider writing something?" I did. I wrote about recognizing financial abuse, without names, without bitterness, just truth, how it starts small. Just helping out, how it hides behind family and love and obligation, how it ends only when you value yourself more than their approval. The response was overwhelming. Colleagues I'd worked beside for years pulled me aside in quiet corners. "This happened to me too. My ex's family did the same thing. How did you get out?" That's how our Thursday group began. 5 nurses at first, then 8, then 12, tea, soft lighting, and honesty. We called it Financial Boundaries for Caregivers, because that's what we were, people trained to care, to sacrifice, to give until we disappeared. And that made us perfect targets for manipulation disguised as love. We were learning to untrain that reflex. One Thursday in September, exactly 1 year after the supply closet call, a letter arrived. No return address, but I knew the handwriting instantly. Evan. For a moment, I considered throwing it away. Then curiosity won. The handwriting was smaller now, neater, like someone trying to measure the weight of every word. "Olivia, I'm writing this from my studio apartment, the one I can actually afford with the 2 jobs I'm working." Funny how I never understood what work meant until I had to do it myself. "I see now what we took from you, not just money, but dignity, respect, belonging. We made you pay for the privilege of being excluded, and I let it happen. Worse, I orchestrated it. Mom still blames you. Claire preaches about loyalty. Jake complains about the warehouse job. They don't get it, but I do now. We weren't a family, we were parasites. And I was the worst one, because I was supposed to love you. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know one person from that mess finally understands. It was wrong. It was cruel. You deserved better." Evan. I read it once, sitting at my small dining table with a cup of coffee, cooling beside me. For a fleeting moment, I felt a quiet sadness for the marriage that could have existed if he'd been this honest from the start. Then I folded the letter carefully, slid it into a small box labeled past, and went on with my day. Sometimes closure isn't a conversation. It's the quiet sound of a box closing. Later, Mrs. Patterson knocked on my door with a folded newspaper in her hands. Nancy's obituary stared back at me. Heart attack at 67. The funeral would be held at the same Laketown church they used to brag about back when they still had everything. Some endings don't need attendance. Their silence says enough. 2 months later, Mrs. Patterson appeared at my door, soft knock, newspaper in hand. "Did you see the obituary?" she asked gently. "Nancy, gone, heart attack, 67. The funeral was set for Saturday, the same church by the lake where I'd once been almost family. I didn't go. 3 weeks later, a certified envelope arrived, a law firm, Nancy's will, written years ago, back when I was the perfect daughter-in-law, back when appearances mattered and I was still funding their facade. She'd left me her jewelry collection. Of course, Claire contested it, but the will was airtight, signed back when Nancy thought generosity could buy my loyalty. The irony was cinematic. From beyond the grave, she'd made one final deposit. The appraiser valued it at $15,000. Gold bracelets, diamond pendants, Pieces she'd worn to dinners I'd never been invited to, bought with the money I'd once sent to keep her comfortable. I sold every piece, then drove to the women's shelter on Maple Street. The director, Patricia, looked startled when I handed her the cashier's check. "This is incredibly generous," she said. "Would you like the donation listed under your name?" "Call it the Family Fund," I told her, "for women finding their real families after losing fake ones." She nodded slowly, understanding in her eyes. The Family Fund it is. Nancy had tried to buy my silence in life and ended up funding someone else's voice in death. Today marks 2 years since that Instagram video. 2 years since my world cracked open, and I finally stepped through. I volunteered for the sunrise shift. It felt right. The drive to the hospital at 5 a.m. was quiet and golden. Empty streets, soft classical music, good coffee in my travel mug. The sky unfolded in shades of peach and forgiveness. My phone sat silent in my bag. No urgent texts, no guilt-soaked voicemails, no manufactured emergencies. Just peace, just purpose. I parked in my reserved space, a small privilege that meant everything, and walked toward the sliding doors. The hospital doors opened, not to a shift, but to a life that was finally mine. They opened with that familiar whoosh, the sound of a place that had seen me broken and watched me rebuild. For the first time in years, it didn't just feel like work. It felt like home. The hospital doors slid open, washing her in a light that felt different this time, not sterile but sacred. Every sound, the hum of monitors, the echo of footsteps, was no longer a reminder of what she'd lost, but proof of what she'd reclaimed. Peace had replaced punishment. Healing had outlasted hurt. And somewhere, in the quiet between heartbeats and new beginnings, Olivia finally understood. Some stories don't end with revenge. They end with return. If you've ever found peace after the storm, instead of revenge within it, you'll want to hear the next story.